Tired of ads interrupting your favorite show? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Download the Amazon Music app or visit amazon.com/ad-free sports. That's amazon.com/ad-free sports to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime members. Some shows may have ads.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AEye Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AEye Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AEye Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to AEye Scouted on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Dave Hendrick, joined as always by Mr. Karl Matchett. How are you, sir?
Top of the table. How are you?
I am fucking fantastic. Top of the table, and we upset Roy Hodgson. It doesn't come much better than that, but if you wanted to get a little bit better than that, Karl, Arsenal lost to Aston Villa. Manchester United got pumped at home by Bournemouth. And Man City, despite a win, found out that Luton's not a fun place to go. So all in all, it was a pretty good weekend to be a Red. We should start with the fact that we're top of the table, though. Let's start there.
I do want to start that we're top of the table, but I want to extrapolate that, let's say. Now, I just want people to cast their minds back. I think this would be about 3 weeks, something like that. I was basically held at gunpoint on this very show, people will remember, and told that if we weren't winning all these games and getting all these points, that I would be held personally responsible for bad results, bad performance, misfortune, beach balls, pigeons, whatever else happened. It was all going to be on me. So Dave, and Guy for that matter, because he might be in the background, he might be silent to some listeners. I can fucking assure you all he's not off the record. So, Luton, fair enough. We drew. It was a bad performance, but we got a last-minute equaliser. And as you've just said, a lot of teams have since found out it's not a nice place to go. And I don't just mean that in a footballing sense. Man City, again, we drew. We didn't win that game, but fine. But it was away against champions of, everything. And they're a pretty good side. Sheffield United, we won. Away from home, and we won. And we hadn't really done that too much. And Crystal Palace, we've now been there and we've won again. Dave, would you like to retract anything, or would you like to indeed update it with the complete 180 opinion of what's going on here?
So what you want to get credit for is 4 poor performances and 4 points dropped against teams not playing well. That's what you want. You want credit for this.
We beat a championship time. So
I mean, look, I'm not
Sheffield United are garbage. Crystal Palace are garbage. Luton are garbage. And Manchester City, when we played them, were in the midst of their joint worst run under Pep. Might have been the start of it was the second game of their joint worst run under Pep. Like, what do you want credit for? We haven't played well once in those games.
This is my point. I don't want credit. What I want is to also not be the fucking blame for all of these things.
Not at all. We were playing really well until you went to the Luton game.
Well, I'm not going again until the new year. So if we happen to be back in sparkling, scintillating form, home and away, across the Christmas and New Year run, I'll reconsider your complaints.
No, fair is fair. Fair is fair. We have broken some of your jinx, some of it, but the performance level, I'm still holding you personally responsible for that. On the weekend, Karl, we obviously upset the Owl Man. We went 1-0 down. Took a very long time to give that penalty. Then AU gets sent off, and that's what really upsets everybody. Then Salah scores, then Elliott scores. The game changed really on the AU red card. I think it's fair to say. What was What was the feeling in the ground when he got that second yellow? Was it like, why is he getting a second yellow here? He hasn't been booked. Because like his first one obviously is for blocking a free kick that's been taken or having it kicked against him, whichever way you want to look at it. But he hasn't backed up the required amount. And by the rule book, it is a yellow card. The second one is as stonewall a yellow card as you're ever going to see. I have a tough time finding why people complain about it when he's committed 2 very blatant yellow card offences. We were obviously annoyed after the Spurs game when Jota got sent off for 2 yellow card offences. But we were mostly annoyed with Jota. I'm struggling with how Crystal Palace fans aren't just mostly annoyed with AEye. You knew you were booked, so what are you jumping in? What are you making that tackle for? You made no attempt to get the ball. And the only excuse I can come up with is maybe he forgot he'd been booked.
My answer to that would be don't. Nothing really other to say other than that, to be honest. To be honest, at the exact moment when he was getting called over, I think bemusement was one that I would use to describe the general populace of the home fans and how they were sort of out looking at it. They were like, hey, how is that even a foul? And then, of course, there were complaints. But it's an obvious yellow card. Like you say, I don't really understand any post-replay, at the very least, gripes that could be had with that yellow card. Like, it wasn't a terrible tackle. Like, it wasn't like a hatchet man's red card sort of waiting to happen accent kind of thing. It was just one of them ones that people do 2-3 times a game when they haven't already been booked. You know, it's commonly referred to as taking one for the team. But if you have, well, then you're getting a second one because that is just a yellow. You've gone through, you've taken him sort of from the side behind, you've not got the ball, it stopped a counter-attack. It's like a very, very obvious yellow. Like, It's not a bad yellow, but it's a yellow.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. And when you're already on a yellow and you get a second yellow, you get sent off. That is just how the game is. Like, take, for example, Villa Arsenal. Declan Rice gets away with pretty much the same challenge that got AEye his second yellow card. Rice then goes and gets a yellow card later in the game, which, had he been booked as he should have been for the first one, would have been a red card. But the likelihood is that he doesn't make that second challenge if he's already on a yellow. Like, AEye it's just a brain fart. Liverpool are breaking. There's a big, big gap behind him. He knows that if Elliott goes by him, Palace are in trouble. And he takes Elliott out. And he just can't have any complaints. We should also point out that we score obviously within 90 seconds or whatever it is. In the build-up to the Salah goal, as Curtis Jones lays it off, there is a horrendous challenge on him by Joel Ward, who'd already been booked. And frankly, it could have been a straight red because it was wild and reckless, but it should at the very least have been a second yellow, and he should have been off.
And even if, like, first of all, I don't think the red card had anything to do with the goal whatsoever, basically. Like, there was no, because AEye wasn't there, Liverpool scored. Nothing to do with that whatsoever. Like, pressure eventually told. It just so happened that it was just after the red card. Like, maybe if we'd have equalised a different way, or it comes down the flanks, or, you know, whatever it is, maybe you can say so. But this goal didn't have anything to do with that. Also, had he not been sent off, had Salah not scored, had it not deflected in and all that sort of knock-on fortunate business had happened, it's still a penalty.
Yeah.
And as you say, a red card because he's already been booked.
Yeah.
So I don't really see any sympathy here, and I don't really see any cause for complaints anywhere along the way, because whatever way you look at it, it's Palace's own mistake by one player or another player or another player. And, you know, Liverpool were in that position through other means. It wasn't like, you know, we got handed a penalty which shouldn't have been or something like that. These were just
exactly
disconnected events. Maybe
there's nothing controversial about the decisions that were made in this game. No. In the first half, there is the penalty that's given and then ruled out because there is a very clear foul on Waturo Endo.
Yeah, it was correct.
Which, as I've said this before, my belief is that when they're sent to the screen, they've been told this decision is getting overturned. I've never seen a referee go to the screen and come back and say, we're sticking with the on-field decision. Not once. My opinion is the only reason they go to the screen is so that they can make it look like it's their decision to overturn it, but it's already been overturned. And we saw in that instance a referee who did not want to overturn it. He did not want to overturn his on-field decision. And he had to be showed over and over and over again why it was a foul. And eventually the decision was overturned. The second one, the goal that they get, the penalty, like it's clearly a penalty. And it's frustrating that it takes so long for them to make the decision. I think when the VAR is replaying that and not clearing it, the referee should be told, stop the game. Stop the game. We're reviewing this. It's going to take 60 seconds. So stop the game. Because what would have happened if we'd scored? Or what would have happened if we'd broken through and let's just say Anderson had hacked down one of our players and been sent off and was away off down the tunnel? Oh, but hang on a second. It's actually a penalty to Palace. So get Anderson back on, and Liverpool player who's been hacked down and may or may not now be injured, sorry, but it was actually a penalty from like 4 minutes ago. So stop the game. But the decision was correct. It was a penalty. Kwanzaa made no contact with the ball, did foul Mateta. It was a penalty. Those two, plus the decision on the red card, they're all the right decisions. It's just the process of getting to the first two was poor. And I'm not really sure how anybody could find reason to gripe with the outcome. We deserved to win that game. Even though we were poor, we deserved to win the game. We were the only team that had ambition to win the game, highlighted by the fact, as I've said before, when they had that late flurry of set pieces, Remy Matthews started to come up for one of the corners and Hodgson frantically waved him back into his own goal because Hodgson didn't want to win the game or didn't want to get a point because the man has no ambition. And when he leaves the game, as he talked about in his post-match, no one will miss him. No one will miss Roy Hodgson. He's a dreadful, dreadful gang of lads.
I think my favourite bit of the post-match press conference was when he suggested that it was unfortunate. I'm going to paraphrase him. I don't want to make him look too bad. It sounds bad enough as it is. He suggested it was maybe not the best thing that post-match reports and all the rest of it would discuss the fact that Palace were losing, winning 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6, 1 out of 7, 1 out of 8, rather than focusing on the fact that they were 1-0 up with 15 minutes to go and have done in previous matches. I'll be honest, I'm yet to see any points awarded in any league anywhere in the history of football for the scoreline at 75 minutes. He didn't also suggest that we should talk about the fact it was 0-0 up until they scored the penalty in our post-match reports, but clearly this is a very, very important sort of 15, 20 minutes or so of a match, which I have not got the experience yet that Roy has to understand why.
He's just the worst. As I said to the lads on Raw, Karl, I'm convinced of this. If you go to Roy Hodgson's house, there are trophies everywhere. And if you go and look at, and you would think if you didn't know, geez, this must be one of the most successful managers in the history of football. There's little mini Premier League trophies everywhere. But if you go and look at them, the inscription reads, kept Fulham in the Premier League, kept Palace in the Premier League, kept West Brom in the Premier League. His view is that the only thing he needs to do each and every season is keep the team in the division. And that if he does that, it's job done. That there should be no ambition to do anything more than that. And this is where we look at, during the week, obviously, they lose 2-0 at home to Bournemouth, which in hindsight looks a better result now that Bournemouth have gone and smashed United 3-0, and it could have been 5 or 6. But for him to come out and say that the fans had been spoiled with their one home win this season, like, it just shows that the guy has no ambition. So for him, he'll convince himself that the fact that they were 1-0 up on 75 somehow means something, as if the game doesn't last, well, in this case, 98 or 99 minutes. That the only thing that matters is if we can go ahead. Like, if they'd been 1-0 up after 6 minutes and we'd scored in the 12th minute, I guarantee you that he would have talked up that as well. Well, we were 1-0 up for the first 10 minutes. But that's not how the game works, Roy.
I did give some very, very brief consideration to rewriting my piece to suggest that Palace had won 1-0 and just to see how it would go down. But I thought maybe not enough people would have heard his post-match presser, so I stayed clear of that in the end. But, talking about Crystal Palace in 14th place and level with 11th place Brentford and all the rest of these things that didn't actually occur, it did appeal for a little while.
Yeah. You could have written that in this two-legged game, Palace lost 2-1, but they did win the first game, being the first 75 minutes, 1-0. And then in the second shorter game, which according to Roy Hodgson is less important, Liverpool actually won 2-0 and therefore take the game 2-1 on aggregate. So we are top, Karl. We're a point clear of Arsenal, 2 clear of Villa, 4 clear of Spurs, of City, and now 7 clear of Spurs. We have Manchester United at home. Then we have Arsenal home. Then we go to Burnley. And then we have Newcastle home. Now, they're all tricky games for different reasons. United, just because it's the rivalry, but we'll talk more about that game in the week. Arsenal then obviously are second in the league, and they're a good team. Now, they've got Brighton before they play us, so they could well drop points there. Burnley will be tough purely because it's away and it's Boxing Day and it's just always a bit of an odd fixture on Boxing Day. And they're desperate for points and yada, 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 all the rest, but we should win that one. And then the Toon at home. And Newcastle, Karl, Newcastle have looked appalling in their last 2 games. Hammered by Everton, hammered by Tottenham. Now they play Milan. Then they play the greatest attacking force known in football history, Fulham, who've scored 16 goals in their last 4 games, having scored 10 in the previous 12. Then they go to Luton, which won't be easy at all. Then they play Forest home, and then they come to us. That game could be very difficult, or it could be quite straightforward, depending on which Newcastle turns up. If the one that turned up yesterday against Spurs rocks up to Anfield, we should beat them quite comfortably. But I am marking that down as a tough game.
Tired of ads interrupting your favorite show? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Download the Amazon Music app or visit amazon.com/ad-free sports. That's amazon.com/ad-free sports to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows, ad-free for Prime members. Some shows may have ads.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
Where do you expect us to be after these 4 games? How many points are you looking at and thinking that's a good return?
I think 12 would be good. I know that's a little obvious, but I think the only way we can say good is 12 points. I think if we take if we take 10, I would say that that's par. And if we take 12, I think that's good. I wouldn't consider anything other than a ferocious battering of Manchester United as good. Nothing else.
That's fair. That's
right?
fair.
Because you include the rivalry, you include the context, you include where they are right at this minute and what we did to them last season. And we weren't in the greatest of moments last season, let's be fucking honest.
Yeah,
and
we were dreadful.
Them. We absolutely annihilated them. So I expect nothing other than the same again. Arsenal is obviously going to be its own game, and I think that will be really, really tough. I don't expect Liverpool to lose. But beyond that, I find it at the moment very tricky to think exactly how it'll go. In part because we have played really poorly for quite a number of matches now. So I will leave that one for a little bit more consideration. Also, there's a slightly different aspect in that there's 6 days between Man United and Arsenal matches, but obviously we have West Ham to play in that gap as well. So how strong we go with West Ham, I think, will really impact on what we're capable of doing against Arsenal. On the plus side, all 3 games are at home, as we've spoken about before.
Yeah.
Burnley away, we should win. That's really all I have to say on that. It'll be a tough game, and they're definitely more confident now. 2 games down the line, maybe that'll be the case, maybe not. But either way, I think that has to be looked at as a win. And obviously at home against Newcastle, a win. Like, even if they've got some players back, that should be a win for them.
Yeah.
Unless they happen to buy 4 players before the December cutoff and then they can all play on the 1st, we should win that.
So would you would say then the only game in which it's acceptable to maybe end up with a draw is Arsenal? Like, taking the West Ham game out of things. Win United, win Burnley, win Newcastle, but a draw against Arsenal, and that's fair enough. Like, if given where we are at the moment with some of the form and some of the injuries that we have, if we get a draw, like that's because that's kind of where I am as well. Is that I look at it and think, right, well, we should win against United and Newcastle at home. We should just beat them, especially United, who are dreadful, and we should go and beat Burnley. But I feel like if we beat Arsenal, that might just send them into a little bit of a spiral. Now, they have West Ham a few days later. West Ham obviously are very hit and miss. Then they go to Fulham, and those just could be 2 tricky enough games. They've got a tricky run coming with Brighton home, us away, West Ham home, Fulham away. That's not easy. And you could see them potentially dropping points in one of the other games. And let's just say that they draw one of those games and we beat them. Then our 1-point lead becomes a 5-point lead over them. I think Villa are actually going to jump them over the next 4 games. But it would just be a big psychological thing if after we play Newcastle, if we beat Newcastle, we look at it and we're 5 points clear on January 1st. And then we have basically a 3-week break. I know we played them in the FA Cup. I'm happy to punt on the FA Cup this year. I would rather us focus on the league, the Europa League, and I would have said the EFL Cup, and I still kind of think the EFL Cup, if it wasn't for the fact that it is Arsenal just a couple of days later. But I'm not at all bothered by that FA Cup game. If we can get through Newcastle, we don't play again until the 21st, at which point we could have added to our squad and we could be looking a really, really good bet to go and win our 2nd Premier League title under Jurgen Klopp.
I mean, there is so much to do before, obviously, that happens. That fine, and we've already said that Man City are going to get so much better, let's say February onwards. We completely expect that.
Yes.
But I do think there would need to be a little bit of gap. But sure, we didn't expect to be in this position at the minute. I didn't expect to be in the position this season where the only game we've lost is one where a goal was disallowed where it shouldn't have been in the last minute against a crap team in an irrelevant match in a terrible competition. And the other one being when we had 9 men in the last minute through an own goal. And
we had a perfectly good goal ruled out through incompetence.
That too.
You know? Like, as we sit here, we should be unbeaten across the board this season. And that, when you consider how many games we've played, That's a remarkable thing. When you consider that Manchester United this season have played 23 games, won 11, drawn 1, and lost 11, and have a -5 goal differential, and last season they finished above us. When you consider what we've done this season, we should all be very, very happy with how things are going. And I agree with your point about City. They will kick on in about February time. Now, after the Newcastle game, our league games are Bournemouth away, Chelsea home, Arsenal away, then Burnley at home. And that gets us to mid-February when normally City kick on. If we were to go and run the table there with maybe, say, one draw, potentially away to Arsenal, which I think would be a good result, considering we won't have, in all likelihood, we won't have Salah for that game. That would leave us in a really strong position because for right now, we're 4 points clear of City. City's running this time, Palace at home. Brentford game is postponed because they're away to the World Club Cup. They have to go to Everton, which I kind of feel could be a banana skin for them because Everton are playing really well and would be top half if they hadn't cheated. Then they play Sheffield United. Then they have to go to Newcastle, which will be very tough. Then they play Burnley, then they play Brentford, then they play Everton. Now, it feels to me, and they'll have a game in hand, but it feels to me, Karl, like we could get to mid-February 8, 9 points ahead of them. They would have a game in hand, but we would have a lead. And at that point, if we've done what's needed in January, we'd be in a really strong position. Like a really, really strong position. We'd have Arsenal away out of the way. We've already been to Spurs. We've been to Chelsea. We've been to Newcastle. We've been to City. We've been to Brighton. Like we have most of our tough away games done already. And the Arsenal game is early February. And our run-in is a bit more straightforward, I think, than City's. Like City would still have to play Arsenal the last game in March. They have Villa then a couple of days later. We have Villa away second last game of the season, which would be really tough. But fingers crossed, we go into that game 5 points clear, and we don't need to win it, and then we can just wrap the title up in the last game. Like. I'm getting ahead of myself. You're not. I'm getting ahead of myself here. But I do feel like if we can get through these next 4 games and get to the turn of the year with potentially a 7 or 8 point lead over City and then maintain that until their good run starts, I really do feel like we have an opportunity to win this title because I don't think Arsenal can win the league. I don't think you can win the league with a goalkeeper as poor as what they're putting out there, with a midfield that lacks any real balance, and with the front 4 or front 3 who aren't scoring from open play. They have 6 non-penalty goals between Saka, Jesus, and Martinelli in the league this season. One of them should have been tagged as an own goal, the Martinelli strike against City. I think they've got too many flaws to win the title this season. I know we've got flaws, but I went through this on the Daily Red today. Everyone has flaws. I think we might have the least flaws and the easiest ones to correct.
Yeah, fair. I mean, you are getting ahead of yourself. No question about it. But also, we've put ourselves in a position where people can get ahead of themselves. Like, we wouldn't be discussing this if we were in the battle for 4th with Spurs and Man United and Newcastle. That's the point of this. We're like maybe as many as 9 or 10 points above where other people might have expected us to be at this stage. And that's a really, really good thing. So I have no problem with discussing it and it being a thing, because obviously that does mean that we are top and we're in a really good position. I think it's going to be very, very instructive where we are, let's say, by the time we play Arsenal in the FA Cup. Like, it's not all that far from now. It's a month, but there's some massive, massive games. And basically our future in 3 competitions is going to be decided by that point. You know, all right, we already know that we're going to be top of the Europa League, but will we have further domestic cup commitments or not 1 month from now? It's already going to be decided. So That plus potential transfers plus the gap between ourselves and Man City with them going away and having that game in hand as a result. All of these things, I think, are going to have a massive, massive weighting on what we eventually do. Plus, obviously, the fact that we do play Arsenal twice in that spell. And if you're looking at the rest of the title challenges, if we've beat them home and away in the league and in the FA Cup, I mean, first of all, unfortunately, my partner might not be speaking to me anymore in the new year, so there's that. But aside from that, it would be pretty strong sentiment to put out to them. Yeah, you've improved loads. You're still not as good as we are, and we're rebuilding.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, they're pretty much... They don't have much left that they can improve without starting to spend huge money on, a Jesus upgrade, a new goalkeeper, a defensive midfielder so Rice can go back to playing his natural position on the left of the three, a left back upgrade, a Gabriel upgrade at centre back. Like, what they would have to do, they're all the real expensive pieces. We've kind of got all our expensive pieces done. We need that defensive midfielder. But, our upgrade at left back doesn't need to be a hugely expensive player. 45 million probably gets that done. I think we need a left winger. But, again, it's not like it's not a 9. You're not looking to buy a number 9. 16 games into last season, Karl, Arsenal were top with 40 points. City were second with 38. Newcastle were third with 33. Then it was Spurs on 29, United on 28, Brighton on 27, and we were 7th with 26 points. So we're 11 points better off. Arsenal are 4 points worse off. City are 5 points worse off. Newcastle are 7 points worse off. Spurs are 1 point better off. And yet the feeling around Spurs is so much more positive than it was 12 months ago, which is sort of funny. United are 1 point worse off, which will tell you that their top 4 finish last season was not as impressive as people made it out to be. They were fairly average and were just very fortunate that Spurs collapsed. Brighton are 1 point worse off, but we're 11 points better off. That is an enormous swing. An enormous swing. Good to see Chelsea being worse. They had 22 points at this point last year, and they have 19 now. So that's well done to Chelsea. 41 points between your first 16 this season and first 16 last season. That £1 billion looking like money well spent. On the topic of how to improve this Liverpool team, Karl, with January just around the corner, how many signings would you, Karl Matchett, Liverpool manager, be looking to make in this window? Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own Two-Footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m, Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
1.
Just 1?
1.
What position would that signing be for?
Holding midfield.
Okay.
If we decided who it is and we knew who it was going to be, whether it was in January or in December, January or summer, it would be just do it now if you can.
Yeah. So you wouldn't look to bring in another centre-back with the Matip ACL. You'd be looking at just, Kwanzaa Gomez as the backup to Virgil and Ibu.
Yes.
Okay. Well, my best friend, now some people will call him a spoofer. I don't get into that type of thing. But Fabrizio Romano has said that he has been told that Liverpool are talking to Joao Palhinha's representatives. Now, Joao Palhinha's agent is his brother, I think it is, who only represents him, doesn't have any other clients. But he's not the representative that will organise and arrange a transfer for Joao Palhinha. That man would be George Mendes. And George Mendes, we have a decent relationship with. We've done business with in recent years. George Mendes is also somebody who feeds information to Romano, which is why Romano knows what's going on at Wolves before, well, everybody, including the Wolves manager at times. So there is a possibility that Romano has solid information directly from Mendes on this. Now, Joao Palhinha is 28 years of age, will turn 29 in the summer. And the rumoured price is around 50 to 55 million. Now, normally, I would say you don't pay that type of money for a player of his age. However, number one, he doesn't have a huge amount of minutes in his legs over his career. His career minutes are about the average career minutes of a 25-year-old. Number two, he doesn't really ever get injured. And number three, the Saudi Pro League has given the Premier League this wonderful out clause for bad contracts and aging players. So if I said to you, we could sign Joao Palhinha in January for 55 million, potentially get, 2.5 good years out of him, and then maybe one decent year where he starts to decline at the age of, as he gets ready to turn 32. And then we could shift him on to Saudi and let's say recoup 25, 30 million. Is there any real downside to that? And do you think he is the right fit in this team to elevate us to win this title?
I mean, he has a lot of traits that I like. A lot of them. And the first of those would be that he's massive.
Yes.
And I sometimes think that we do lack not just the physicality, which we definitely do this season in midfield. We lack a bit of, let's say, upper body strength at times, but also aerial ability. Like, we don't really have anybody at all in midfield areas now who is good at quite consistently winning headers. Even when we had a few bigger players, to be honest, and even now the ones that are left, Dom is pretty big, not really a heading guy. Gakpo, not sure he's ever used his upper body as a strength thing. We need somebody else in there who's good at that. And of course, in both defensive and attacking penalty boxes, that's a real asset off set plays as well. So that's really good. He's not necessarily as metronomic as you want someone to be in midfield if they're playing in a very possession-based side. But on the other hand, you've got to measure that against the fact that he's not playing in a massively possession-based side. So the requirements on him are not that. So if the plan is basically to continue with A6 and then Trent moving in as a second 6, therefore you have that passing range in that area of the pitch, that's not really an issue either way anyway. I love the fact that he's very good at driving forward from deep. I really like the fact that he is so happy to play quite, I wouldn't say like tricky or massively creative passes, but definitely lower percentage passes when he's moving into the final third at times. He's not afraid to take on a shot. He's not someone who's going to beat players, but he's a good ball carrier. I think when space opens up ahead of him, he's pretty quick at breaking through, a little 10, 15 yard gap that overcommits somebody else. You lay off, blah, 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 on it goes. So I do think he's good at starting attacking moves from that material. Technically, from a defensive standpoint, is very, very good. And there's not really any way to say about it. Like, he's one of the best or most regular tacklers. His interception, his positional play is pretty good as well. Like I said, his aerial stuff is excellent. Never, ever afraid to make a Jordan Ayew-esque foul when he doesn't have a yellow card already.
Yeah.
There's lots and lots that we could use from his game, no question. He's not ridiculously rapid. We have to acknowledge that. He's not going to solve every single aspect that we have, especially in terms of like playing it down the channels. I'm not sure about, let's say, the covering aspect at centre-back, because again, Fulham don't really play like that, but when Kanate or whoever it is now is dragged out to that right-hand side, usually we'll now look to one of our central midfielders to fill in that gap centrally. We don't see him do that too much with Fulham. He does a bit more with Portugal at times. So
Yeah.
again, that's an aspect that, for example, Endo has taken a little bit of time to get on board, but I think Endo is now much better at the stepping up pressing part of the number 6 game for us, and a little bit better at the dropping back in. So I'd assume Palhinha would do all right there too. If you're talking about 30 million transfer net spend on this one player for 3 years, I would take it.
Yeah, I very much would as well. And, you know, you're right when you say he doesn't play in a heavy possession-based team. But we also can look back to when he was in Portugal. And he was at Braga on loan, playing under Ruben Amorim. And then he became absolutely vital for Amorim at Sporting when Amorim took over and made him a foundational part of a team that would go on and win the title. And they did play possession-based style. And look, all I want him to do, and all I think he needs to do in our team, win the ball back and give it to one of the lads that can play. If we're playing a box midfield of him, Trent, Alexis, and Dominic, all he needs to be able to do is win the ball back and give it to one of the 3 of them. Or if he wants to get a little bit ambitious, give it wide to Mo. We have enough lads that can do the creative on-ball stuff. All we really need him to do is win the ball back and give it to them. In a double pivot with Trent, you'd also give him a bit of license to get forward. And we've seen since he's joined Fulham and at Braga and at Sporting, he can be a bit of a goal threat. Like, he's got 6 goals for Fulham in 55 games, which is pretty good. He got 6 in 66 for Braga. He got 5 in 77 for Sporting in his second spell there. Like, they're not massive numbers, but compare and contrast to 3 goals in the last 100 games from Jordan Henderson. You know, it's still an uptick. And he'd get more opportunities in our team. And we've seen him be a threat with long-range shooting, which is a good addition. He's obviously an enormous human being who's great in the air. So he'd be a big threat from set pieces as well, or just getting in the box and maybe getting on the end of a cross from Andy Robertson. And as I look at our double pivot, if Trent is right side and Palhinha is left side, that helps because Andy Robertson tends to abandon the defensive side to bomb forward and provide the overlapping option. And if Palhinha can do that thing of just dropping a little bit deeper between the centre-backs, allowing Virgil to go across a bit more to the left, it should make us a lot more solid. And then Trent and Alexis could almost play as a double pivot in front of him, as a recycling double pivot, allowing Dominic to join the attack, Robbo to join the attack, and the front 3 to be there. So we could almost have like a 3-man defensive block, 2 sitting in front of them to recycle and protect a little bit, and then 5 committed to the attack. Not all the time, obviously, but it would create a different look for us, something that we don't have at the moment. And I feel like at that price, like, we should have signed him a couple of years ago when he was available for 20 million, but we didn't. But at that price, I just feel like it's a little bit too good to turn down, because it's something we desperately need. And I always look at smart clubs and who are smart clubs looking for? And Bayern Munich are one of the smartest clubs in Europe. And they tried desperately to sign him in the summer. So they weren't put off by his age. Now, the Bundesliga is easier to play in than the Premier League and whatever else, but they weren't put off by his age. So I feel like, you know, we're not out here on an island where, you know, it's like us and a bunch of mediocre teams looking at him. Top clubs are looking at him. Arsenal, Bayern, He was linked to Chelsea recently as well, which would just be hilarious. And he's been linked to United, which he should avoid like the plague. But like, it doesn't feel like this is us reaching for a player that's not going to be capable. He's won a league title. He's played at the top level in Portugal, which is a good league to judge players on, to translate into the Premier League. We've seen a bunch of players make that jump and sustain a really high level. And I feel like he's come over to the Premier League. He's been outstanding for Fulham. I love his attitude as well, because it would have been really easy for him to sulk after the Bayern move fell through. But he's been fantastic for them this year. Like, genuinely outstanding again. So it shows that he's got a strong mentality. And I feel like there's no real negative to a move for him because of the fact that in a few years, if he starts to decline, we can ship him to Saudi, because George Mendes will bring him to Saudi, because that's what George Mendes does with players. I genuinely don't see... He's not my number one choice, but my number one choice is not going to be available in January. And if we weren't top and we didn't look like we've got a great chance of winning the title, I wouldn't be as adamant about this, but I really feel like this would be a big missed opportunity if we didn't go and get him and go all in. And even if we don't win the league, as long as we commit to trying to win it, that to me is a really positive sign.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
So 2 things just to not wrap up, but to certainly add context to this. You mentioned Bayern obviously tried very, very hard to get him. So we should mention that deal fell through, even had a medical and everything, because Fulham didn't get a replacement. That's the only reason that didn't go through in the end. They wanted one in before Palhinha went out. I think it was McTominay they were trying to get in the end, and they couldn't agree a fee or whatever it was with them. So Palhinha then fell through. Did he not then sign a new deal with them? And that's where this release come from now?
He did. He signed a new deal, and the reporting around it is that it contains an agreement to allow him to leave for a set price, which I assume is similar to when Alexis McAllister signed his new deal and it had an agreement that he could leave at a set price.
Because this is the money you're talking about here is obviously a little bit cheaper than Bayern were paying in the summer. Yeah. Now,
there's a possibility that agreement doesn't kick in till the summer. Alexis's didn't kick in till the summer. So maybe it would be similar to what Bayern were looking to pay, which was about £65 million. But again, like, if you win a league title and he plays an important role in that, it justifies paying the money. Do you know? It justifies paying the money.
Plus, I suppose if we're talking in terms of Liverpool's squad and, his age and all the rest of it, we've obviously just signed Wataru Endo, same position, who's 30. So, he's older than him there. It's not like this is a very, very old player that we're signing. And obviously Henderson, Milner, Fabinho all leaving this past summer in that area of the pitch, all played that role in the team. All of them are older than him. So again, this is still a reduction of the age, even if this is not a very, very young player himself.
Exactly. Like again, you look at the career minutes, and they're not the career minutes of a player of his age. They're significantly lower. He doesn't have injury issues. Like in his entire career, he has missed one game for Fulham with a dislocated shoulder, and he's missed 10 other games. One through the flu, 4 through coronavirus, and he's had one muscle injury in his entire career that he missed 5 games for. And that's it. Like, that's it in his career. So you're not looking at someone that's had a
not
lot.
Injuries is the issue there.
Yes. Yeah. Now, he has missed games through suspensions. That's absolutely fair. Since joining Fulham, he's missed 4 games through suspensions. Last year, he missed 3, all through yellow card suspensions. He has missed 1 game this season with a yellow card suspension. In his career, though, he's only ever been sent off, unless I'm missing something, he's only ever been sent off once, Karl.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, if you get sent off as a defensive midfielder, it's, there's usually a fairly good reason for it. And hopefully even those yellow cards might not disappear because of the way he plays, but certainly reduce a little bit if we're not a team who's going to be quite as defensive required in terms of the number of interventions as he has been at Fulham.
Yeah. I mean, he's currently sitting on under 22,000 career minutes, which isn't a huge amount at all, and I just think we look too often at the age, but what we really need to look at is miles in the legs. Like, you look at someone like Marcus Rashford, for example, he's already well over 26,000 minutes. And he's not long turned 26 years of age. So he's over 4.5. He's about 4,500 more than Joao Palhinha. And I think you can see it with Rashford. We've seen a lot of injuries in recent years, and I think you're now seeing him start to stagnate a bit. We've seen it with Dele Alli, obviously, as well. Now, there's other factors with Dele, but there's a lot of these younger players that are being hugely overplayed and burning out, whereas he doesn't look like he's going to burn out. Just for context, Jude Bellingham is 20, and he's pushing 15,000 minutes. Like, that's 2 seasons worth of games between him and Palhinha is 8 years older. So he doesn't have the minutes load of a typical 28 turning 29 player. It's more a 24, 25 kind of player. And that, I think, is another positive, another reason to consider going and getting him. Let's quickly move to the game on Thursday night. Liverpool away in the Europa League to Union, a game that has absolutely no meaning for us because we are through. But it does matter for them. A 3-0 or a win combined with a Toulouse loss, I believe, sees them go through if the scorelines match up. They drew with Toulouse. Yeah, they drew twice with Toulouse. So it'll go down to goal difference between them. So they would need to win, and they'd need Toulouse to lose against Lask. And that would see them advance. So we've nothing to play for here, Karl. So what kind of team are we lining up? Obviously, Callagher will start. What sort of defence are we sending? Because I'm of the opinion that none of Gomez, Konate, or Virgil can start. Trent can't start, and Costas can't start.
Well, look, obviously we want to be playing people who are not going to be involved against Man United to give them a bit of a rest. Maybe you can send a few players who benefit from sharpness to play second half sub appearances. But by and large, we want people who are not going to be playing against United. So you've just signed Joao Palhinha for us, so he can captain the team. That's fine. He can go midfield. I mean, basically what you want to do here is look at people who've appeared for us this season and say, start them, and that'll do. So fit them wherever they fit, but James McConnell should assuming these players are fit, be in the team. Ben Doak should be in the team. Joao Kwanzaa should probably start, I suppose, because he started at the weekend, which I think is probably as much to do with managing Konate's minutes at the minute as much as anything else. So, assuming Konate plays against United now, Kwanzaa can play this game from the start. I think there's a little bit of a question mark over Endo, just because he's obviously started the last two, but he only played half against Palace, and I assume if Alexis is back, Alexis goes back into the 6. So if that's the case, start Endo again here.
Yeah.
Then you've got 2 of your 3 midfielders if McConnell plays as well.
Yeah, and Gravenberch will be the third one, surely.
Well, I mean, he's started quite a few games.
He cannot start against United, Karl. He cannot
He's been very, very poor. But then, is Elliott the third one?
I would say you go Chambers, Endo, Gravenberch as the midfield 3 here. Chambers. In front of it. Oh, not Chambers. Sorry, McConnell. McConnell, Endo, Gravenberch as the midfield 3. Right. I think you go Bradley, Kwanzaa. Maybe Gomez has to play. Gomez has to play, and then Scanlon is left back, or Scanlon or Chambers are left back. Probably Chambers. So Bradley, Gomez, Kwanzaa, Chambers, McConnell, Endo, Gravenberch, and then Harvey, Cody, maybe?
Yeah.
And Doak as the front 3. Like, I'd rather not play Cody, but I don't really know what alternative there is. I mean, could Melkamu Fraundorf come in for a run? He's played for the first team before. There's minutes here surely for Cade Gordon. Isaac Mabea, he's been around the first team picture, so maybe he gets minutes. I mean, Karl, I'm not even joking when I say I'd probably start someone like Harvey Blair if he's fit, because I just don't want any of our first team players really playing in this game. Anyone who's likely to start against United, I don't want starting here.
So one question on that, and obviously we're not going to do a United starting 11 or anything now because there's time to go, but do you think Harvey Elliott's put himself into the conversation to start that game?
I do. I don't know where.
Yeah.
I think if I look at that game against United, the back 4 is the back 4, with Costas obviously filling in for Robbo at the moment. Mo and Darwin are nailed on. Alexis, assuming he's fit, which I assume he will be, nailed on. I think Curtis has to start. And the other 2 spots, I would say the 2 most deserving of playing in them are Dominic and Harvey Elliott. But it would mean one of them playing left wing. And I would prefer it to be Harvey, but I could very easily see Jurgen going Harvey, Alexis, Jones as a midfield 3, and Mo, Darwin, Dominic as a front 3 against United. And I think on form, they're the 6 that deserve to start in those positions. Now, again, you can switch Harvey to left wing and Dominic back into midfield. I would prefer that, I think. But we've seen no inclination from Jurgen to use Harvey wide left. Though I'd like to see what it would look like, I think you could play it as a 4-man midfield that almost becomes a 5-man midfield when Trent steps in. Ideally, I wouldn't start Harvey against Union, but I'm just looking at, like, he's going to play a couple of senior players. Not that Harvey's a senior player, but you know what I mean, like first team regular players. He's not just going to play children, because he's going to want to at least be competitive in the game.
Only one other thing I'd say is that Harvey Elliott is the player with the most minutes in the Europa League so far. He's basically been a go-to. He started all 5 games there. So I think he will be involved in this one again, to be honest.
Yeah, I do as well.
And yeah, it is hard to argue against him being included in any starting lineup because, as I said before the weekend pod, I think he's been really important for us and has shown really good impetus, let's say, coming off the bench or whatever his role has been in each game. I think he's done a really good job. So Absolutely fair to have him involved. Bradley, you've already mentioned Scanlon or Chambers, perhaps for one of the other sides. Again, you maybe got minutes for one of those players there.
Trey Nyonyi probably makes the bench, the young midfield kid that's
maybe
seemingly.
I mean, look, there's a few players who have been out for the 21s this season and have come back recently. I'm not sure, to be honest, if all of them are on the B list because of the ages and that, but I think Bobby Clark was one. Malcolm Ufrandorf was another one who came back to full training. So there are a few players who could be involved who haven't been, but like I said, I don't honestly know if they're all included on the B list because of the ages that they have.
Yeah. Jay Spearing, if he could play, I'd play him because I genuinely don't care who we play.
European experience. He's got European experience.
That's exactly
he even score against PSV, was it?
I believe he did score once in Europe.
Pretty sure he did back in the day.
Jay Spearing. No. Jay Spearing, 13 European games, the Reds, unfortunately, no goals.
He must have just played well. He's in my head for that match for whatever reason.
Do you know, it's funny with Jay because it felt like he was at Liverpool for a long, long time and played a lot. He only played 55 games for us. Obviously went on to play for Bolton and then did well there. Went to Blackpool. Blackpool did well there and then had a decent spell at Tranmere. Kind of found his level around League One. But yeah, credit to him. He carved out a decent career in the game for himself. And now, by all accounts, very highly thought of as a coach at our academy. And he's, playing a role at the club for the under-21s.
I've just realised why he's in my head for the PSV game.
Why?
That was his debut. So it wasn't a goal, it was his first time he played for the season.
Right. It was. Yeah, because Rafa gave him his debut. Yeah, fair play.
Yeah.
Right. We haven't really talked about the Union game because there's no real point because who knows what Jurgen's going to do. Like he shouldn't risk anybody that's played heavy minutes and that he might want to use against United. But he is going to risk a couple because there's a competitive nature to Jurgen. There's also a sporting integrity part of this as well, where if we did send over Karl, Caroline, and the chicken staff, as Luis Suarez once called them, and let's say Union pumped us and Toulouse lose, and Union sneak in, Toulouse could make a complaint that we had basically thrown the game, which wouldn't be.
If we've used players who are registered, they can't. That's the whole point.
Agreed. But they could make it. I'm not talking about an official complaint. I'm talking about just a public decry of our behaviour.
One other minor thing, which I suppose we should mention, is the prize money. It's not great in the Europa League, but if you win, it's 600,000 euros or just over 600,000 euros. So, you got to get it if it's there.
Yeah, a little chunk off the Palhinha fee, hopefully. Right, give me a prediction then for this non-important game.
Considering if we win, draw, or lose by any scoreline whatsoever, it doesn't matter. We finish top. This is both difficult and pointless. So I'm going to go with 3-3.
I'm going to base my prediction off the team that I would pick if I was the manager, and I'm going to say we lose 4-0.
I'm going to go with a more interesting prediction and say both McAllisters get on the score sheet one way or another, but there could be an own goal involved.
I really don't want to see Alexis McAllister anywhere near this game. I wouldn't even let the lad travel. Him, Virgil, I'd be telling them that the plane is leaving Wednesday at 5 when the plane is left Wednesday at noon.
Yeah,
and they all
Manchester.
turn up. Yeah, literally. And let them all stay home. Everybody who's going to play against United, let them all stay home. Right, we'll leave it there. We'll be back later this week with a more normally structured podcast around the Manchester United game and hopefully yet another tonking of United to add to our list and potentially a sacking in the aftermath for one bold Dutchman. Karl, is there anything you want to plug before we go?
No.
No, there we go. Right, folks, take care. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.